Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Mettaverse. It's meta with two T's, and meta is a word meaning loving kindness. Thank you for joining us, and I'll hand us over to our delightful host, Denise.
Yay, Kevin.
You did it.
Hello, our lovely metaverse. Oh, look, you're getting applause.
Oh.
So excited to see everybody again. Thank you. I am Denise Smith. I wanted to right off the bat, because we know our time was so valuable with Karuna Cayton last week, to get right to the point, but I do want us to set our intentions. So let's take one quick minute and just really set our altruistic intention for being here and coming here tonight. Thank you. We are talking about the nature of reality. This is our second out of a three-part series with Karuna Cayton. And without further ado, take it away, Karuna. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, good evening, everybody, or wherever you are. I guess not evening for everyone, maybe. So first of all, any comments or insights from last week? I had a couple, but I'm going to wait to see if you had any. And sometimes it's good. I can't remember what. I think I was just all over the place. Maybe I don't know if I had. I wasn't sharing slides, was I?
No.
No. Okay. That's why I do slides, because it keeps me organized, and usually I cover 2 slides out of 60. So, so is anything you thought about or reflected on before I jump in? No? Okay.
There were a couple of things in my rewatching it. One, we made mention of Shakyamuni Buddha. And I know that when I was first starting, I didn't know that there was more than one.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that we might be able to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Do other people have that kind of question?
More than one brand of Buddhism?
Well, one Buddha.
Oh, more than one Buddha. Okay.
Yeah, historical. So does there, well, I'll still answer your question. I'm just curious if other people had that.
Did anybody else have a question like that, or did it ring to them when we was talking last week? Trying to be, there we go. Sorry, I have us on my hot spot now.
Okay. Nathan had a question. Why don't you repeat it, because it may have not picked up in the recording.
Yeah, I said, so we just did these intention things. I'm not really familiar with it. What is the point of it?
So hopefully there's a lot of content for us to cover, and I can put that question into a clear context within a description of Buddhist psychology. And remember that Buddhist psychology is vast. I mean, you can't do it much in an hour or even many hours, because the whole, as we talked last week, I would say, the teachings that the Buddha taught, the historical Buddha, and that's going back to Denise's question, the historical Buddha, who we refer to as Shakyamuni Buddha or Siddhartha, before he obtained Buddhahood, he was Siddhartha. And that was like 2,600 years ago. And I told this, a rough story of his biography, a rough biography of him. And so he all of his teachings are collected into 3, they call baskets, 3 collections. And clearly one whole collection of that is psychology. So that's an amazing amount of teachings. The other one, another basket, is ethics. And we could even go into we can even explain how ethics is also, of course, related with psychology. So it's a science of mind. Remember, we talked about science of mind. Now, we're not going to get too much into it, but when you start, well, we will get into it. We will get into it. But in fact, why don't I launch into that in a minute? Okay, so Nathan, hang on to that, and I'll go into more depth. How about that? Because it's, yeah. And then with respect to Denise's question, so in Buddhism, there are two major traditions. They're not at odds with each other. They just are philosophically have different emphasis and different sets of texts that they focus on versus that Shakyamuni himself did teach 2,600 years ago. And who knows what was going on then? You know, they didn't write anything down. They didn't write anything down for, I think, 500 years. Now, that's not surprising when you look at one of the qualities of meditation is that you can remember everything. So they passed down all these teachings verbally to their disciples, and the disciples would memorize as well. So even in the monasteries today, there's amazing activity of memorization. I can't tell you how many pages these monks memorize. The monastery that I spent time in, which is not uncommon, they start off with memorization, the young monks, because they're not quite at the point where they can conceive or understand the philosophical and the psychological teachings. You know, they're young, they're 7, 8, 9, 10, and like that. Once they get to about 13, 14, then they start to really study the teachings rather than just memorizing. They're also taught other things. It's not, but the philosophical and psychological teachings don't start until they're about 13 or 14. So clearly so these are, I can't remember how many, I think there's 300 pages of the Buddhist teachings. I think I mentioned last week, it would take a monk reciting those teachings 40 days, day and night. And they recite really fast to get through all the just the teachings of the Buddha. So there's a lot. It's a whole huge corpus of teachings. So over the millennium, then the different scholars and meditators would focus on certain areas of teaching. It's like with us here today, I imagine that if we might extract certain teachings that are more akin to science, right? Maybe less faith-oriented or things like that, because that's our culture, that's our mindset, somewhat rational. And then in other cultures that were devotional, they would focus on maybe more devotional, faith-oriented teachings. There's not, eventually you don't just rely on faith on any of the Buddhist traditions. So this Mahayana and Hinayana, and the Hinayanists don't call themselves Hinayanists. It's a Mahayana term. Hinayana, it means narrow. Narrow, and Hinayana means path or vehicle, so it's a narrow vehicle. Maha means great, so it's a great vehicle. But the Hinayana, the use of the word Hinayana is not really in a disparaging way. It just means the kind of practice that they focus on is very regimented. For example, when we think about psychology, let's say I have a problem with drinking, right? Which I don't. But let's say I had a problem with drinking. I have a lot of problems, so that's not one of them, fortunately. So the problem with drinking, if you look in terms of the Buddhist path and the vehicles, they offer three general ways to approach the problem of drinking or an addiction. Okay. And the first one is the Hinayana path or the Hinayana mindset. And that one says, take a vow. I'm very overly simplistic, by the way. So I hope this is being recorded and I don't care. It goes on the internet. But just so people listening on the internet also understand that I'm being overly simplistic to make a point. So in the Hinayana, which is very profound, you can attain nirvana following the Hinayana path. So it's very vast and deep and profound. And nirvana meaning freedom from confusion and problems, right? And so, but the traditional Hinayana approach would say, okay, look at number one, you want to quit drinking, take a vow to not drink. Okay. Then limit your environment. Don't go into bars. Makes sense. I mean, AA is going to tell you the same thing, right? be careful
Yeah.
who you hang out with, right? Be careful who you don't hang around drinkers. Okay. So those and then meditate like this, and their meditation's very focused on not allowing your mind to enter whatever it is that gets you to drink. So it's very strict discipline in that channel. Okay. And then if you have wandering thoughts to drink, or you slip up, then you do kinds of confessions and other purification, other practices. The Mahayana do the same thing, but they take a wider view of it. And ultimately, there's a very profound view. In the Mahayana, there's two vehicles. There's, Mahayana, they say sutra, and then tantra, and you've probably heard the word tantra before. And in tantra, it's very, very advanced, and people very advanced. I don't even, but you have to have some attainment already in meditation to practice tantra. But one of the things is, in the Mahayana, they might say, hey, look at, that problem you have with drinking, why not open yourself up to it? Because it's an affliction, right? And the Hinduyans will say it's an affliction too. It's desire or attachment or whatever. And so they say, don't allow that to arise. That's what the Hinduyans say. Mahayana is kind of a bit more risky, because it says, well, if it arises, and it will arise, use other kinds of meditation practices to subdue that attachment to drinking. Okay, one of them might be, when you're very advanced, you go into bars. You don't drink necessarily. You might go into bars because you test yourself. I wouldn't say any of us can do that. But as your meditation practice advances, you can see why that could be why the Mahayanas promote that kind of thinking, is because it more quickly purifies the imprints on our mind. So the reason a person drinks, and this is coming back to intention eventually, the reason a person drinks is because they have the proclivity to drink. Okay? Where do they get that proclivity from? Well, there are imprints that have been placed, if you want to put it that way, on the consciousness itself, one's own consciousness. Okay? It's a habit. And in Buddhism, habit is in Buddhist psychology and philosophy, and this is really helpful if you struggle with the idea of karma. Karma just means habit, but it describes why it's a habit. Okay, so let's say you have a habit of drinking. So in Western psychology, you start looking at the habit being, well, it's your family system, depending on the psychologist or therapist therapy model, right? It's, oh, you come from an alcoholic family, or you're shame-based, or your mother, or it's a family dynamic, depending. There are many different models in psychology these days. Okay, some models don't even care where it came from, just get rid of it. Okay, like a lot of the work I did with narrative therapy and positive psychology, they don't, and then brief solution focused therapy, those kinds of things don't go into so much about causes. The difference in Buddhist psychology is the cause is not our mother, our environment, our DNA also, because now we've got a lot of talk about DNA. That's not the cause. Those are conditions. So, and in Buddhism, remember, we're looking for freedom from problems. And the word for freedom from problems is nirvana. And then the higher attainment is enlightenment. Okay? There's two kinds of levels of freedom. So what happens is, and now I'm going to go to my slides. So keep me on this track, okay? Because the slide I want to get to I hopefully will help. And I got to have a screen share.
Okay, hang on. Karuna, you said 3 buckets. One part
Three buckets. That all the teachings fall within 3 baskets, or 3
psychology, ethics, and philosophy. What was the third one?
Wisdom.
With psychology, ethics, and wisdom.
Mm-hmm. And psychology and wisdom, of course, are both psychology. Okay, in this context, and ethics, you could say even too, is part of psychology. So most of the teachings are psychological. Okay, these are slides that I often, some quotes that I often share because I think they're helpful. This one, and then I'll go to the psychology, the psychology, psychological map, one schematic that Buddhism uses. Of course, the human mind has both positive and negative sides, but the negative is transient, very temporary. Your up and down emotions are like clouds in the sky. Beyond them, the real, basic human nature is clear and pure. Okay. So the mind, just to go through this, yeah, this is kind of a progression that we're going through. So the definition of the mind we don't have in Western psychology, by the way. No one agrees. Did I cover this last week? I don't think I did. Did I? No. So the actual definition, now everything in Buddhism, I'm going to tell you, which is very fascinating, is that everything, in Buddhism has a definition. Okay. What I mean by that is that in order to have a conversation, like let's say Marie and I want to talk about the soul, okay? I have to ask her, and we don't do this in the West very much, right? I have to ask, okay, tell me what you mean by soul, right? So in Buddhism, there's a lot of debate. Debate is a very, very integral part of developing your own mind and developing realizations which come through meditation as well. Okay, so point here is that there is a definition of everything in Buddhism that you're going to have a debate or discussion about. Well, the very fundamental definition we need is what the heck is the definition of mind? And if you go to Korea, if you go to Cambodia, if you go to Tibet, if you go to Nepal, if you go to Sri Lanka, wherever there's a Buddhist scholar, I can't say every Buddhist, but a Buddhist scholar, they all have the same definition of mind. So a Korean master can have a debate with a Sri Lankan master, or a discussion, we should say, a dialogue. Okay? So the definition of mind, this is not the definition here technically. The definition of mind is that it's clear or luminous, and it cognizes objects. It perceives. Okay? This is why, Denise, AI is not a sentient being. Sentient beings have mind. Okay? There's no clear in the AI platform. Okay? But I don't want to go there, but that's one way you begin to have a debate about it and have a discussion. Is it sentient or not? Well, does it have a clear or luminous quality? And does it perceive objects? Okay? Now, the thing about the mind is that it's beginningless. You cannot find a beginning to it, and hence that what I want to say is that quality of beginninglessness supports the idea of reincarnation. Now, it's also not physical, it's formless. Okay, this body, the desk, the computer, the world, and the planet, that's all physical. That's all form. Okay. It's made up of atoms and particles. Okay. And the mind is not. Okay. It's not limited. It can go outside your head. It can go outside your body. It's not constrained to your body. It is constrained by other factors, but it's not constrained by any means of, ultimately speaking at all. And it's an impermanent phenomenon. Now, definition of impermanent. See, remember, everything is defined. Okay, this is very important because impermanence is a very big, important concept in understanding reality, which is our purpose of our talk. Impermanent means anything that is produced. Now, sounds weird, right? But this is the way it works. We have to get comfortable with these definitions and terms. They're not very cozy when you first, hear them. But what it means by produced is impermanent phenomena. Anything that has a cause is impermanent. Okay? Anything that has a cause is impermanent. The mind has a cause. And impermanent also means it's something that moves moment to moment, instant to instant. So you don't have a cause, like the cause of my house collapsing in, well, hopefully not now, the cause of my house collapse, or even, let's take this, the cause of your car decaying, right, is something that happens moment to moment, isn't it? When you think of it scientifically, logically, it's not like you come out of your house one day and go, oh man, my car's so old, I'm going to get a new one. Okay, that's just when you recognize it in a particular way. But the actuality of that phenomenon is that it changes instant to instant. And again, when we talk, and this is going to come up later next week, when we talk about the nature reality, if the nature reality, one of the conventional reality, is that everything's changing instant to instant, and we don't see that, then we're not seeing reality, are we? Does that make sense? We're seeing something else. Okay. When we look, if you look at anything in your eyesight right now, or anything that you're hearing, or anything you smell, any taste, any, tactile feeling, all the five senses, and everything in your mental perception. If you spend some time with this, and Denise, maybe you can do this when your meditations with them, is everything appears to us as permanent. It's very important. Everything appears to us as unchanging. And if I say to you, oh, is it changing? Yeah, that cake is changing because I know it's melting. You got to put it back in the fridge or it's going to melt. It's an ice cream cake, right? Well, the body is the same thing. The desk in front of you is the same thing. The walls are the same thing. Every physical form, which are cognized by the five senses, is that way. And the mind itself, but the mind is not atomic. The mind is formless. It's clear, which is an awesome concept because it allows us to be completely free. Okay. I know there's a lot. Is this too much? Denise, am I overwhelming them?
I think we can ask.
Am I overwhelming you?
I don't think you're overwhelming me.
Okay. So anyone else?
Yeah, anyone else?
Stacy, you're next on my question list. How are you doing?
Thanks. No, I'm following this. I'm not exactly sure how to use it, so I'm just waiting for more.
Okay, we're going to, of course, that's the purpose, right? But I'll give you an example. When you're going into the, do you have a partner?
Yep.
Yeah. She.
Yeah, husband and kids. Yep.
Yeah, husband and kids. Okay, so your husband, I'm going to be very, very stereotypical. Your husband comes home and you need help in the kitchen, and he's tired or whatever. This could be you too, but I'm just using it as a type generalization. And he walks through the kitchen and sits down on the couch, turns on the TV. When that happens, you're seeing a fixed person. Okay, what's appearing to your mind is something solid and concrete, and then you get like pissed off and irritated, right? Follow me?
Husband, yep.
Yeah. So the point is, now this is not for right now, but this is when we talk about the nature of reality. This is the kind of meditation we begin to do. We start, he is appearing to you as permanent. Even though the guy who walked in the door and the guy who sat down on the couch, 100% different human being, right? I mean, of course, there's a continuity, but there's continuity, but everything has been moving. And not only that, Stacy, your mind has been moving. Before he came in, you were playing around with the kids, they're helping you cook. He came in and then your mood changed because you just walked through, you looked a little grumpy, right? So all of that appears. So
I do have a question.
Yeah. So when you get grumpy like that, it's because you see him as concrete, permanent. And you also see there's an image that arises in your mind. This is the psychology of it. It's kind of advanced, but there's so you're actually interacting with a mental image in your mind. And that mental image appears as a permanent fixed object. And your sense of self identity also appears that way. I'm getting way ahead of myself, but that's why impermanence is very important, because none of that is the fact. Okay. So yeah, Nathan.
Yeah, so my question is, like, a monk, right?
Yeah.
Do they deal with this issue?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or, like, is this something they deal with because they're probably so aware of their own mind that they understand why everything is, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay, so say it again, because I was getting a message about this.
So yeah, I'm asking, does a monk have to deal with something like this?
Well, okay, that's great. So first of all, monk come in all shapes and colors, right?
Yeah.
Styles. I mean, today, take a Westerner who, for example, well, it doesn't be Westerner, but let's take a Westerner who, falls in, love with the teachings. I want to be a monk or nun. Nothing changes much when he puts she puts the robes on, right?
Yeah.
So of course, there's no. I mean, we should
So
show.
like an experienced monk, I might say.
Yeah, so an experienced monk means someone who has developed his or her mind through the practice of meditation and debate, right? Because the mind becomes very refined and clear. So yes, that person, through meditate, through purifying their mind, clearing their mind, so they get to that clear nature we're talking about. They have an experience of it. Then what happens, Nathan, is that everything appears to them like a cloud moving through the sky. It's like when we say, I can't stand the fog when it gets foggy here in Santa Cruz in the morning, so foggy. The problem with that statement is I'm seeing the fog as not something that's moving, isn't it? But it's moving, right? The fog in fact, even the fog you can't find because it's a bunch of little particles of water, and then you look at the water, and the particles of water are little subparticles of other things. See, so that is what the monk sees, or the meditator sees, and you don't have to be a monk to see this, right? Just meditate and develop your mind. And there are many lay qualified teachers and practitioners. You just have to develop your mind. Yes, then you begin to see reality.
Okay, so my question is, really what this is the ability to recognize what you think, right? The ability to recognize how you're affected by everything around you.
And recognizing the nature of your thoughts.
Yeah, okay.
It's a very subjective experience, yes. One other thing I meant to arose, so well, it's okay. I was going to comment on your question last week about going through walls and stuff, but I don't want to get into it, but I had a thought about it afterwards. I thought, Nathan, you were talking about the science between why it would be
So
difficult.
that was Lucas, my brother.
Oh, Lucas, I'm sorry. Lucas, are you here? You are here.
He's coming, not yet. Oh, he is here now. Good. Yeah.
I'm here now.
Okay, did you figure that out, Lucas, about moving, passing through wall?
Yeah, I'll figure it out.
No, good. Well, actually, you gave one sign. I don't want to get into too deeply right now, but you gave one sort of scientific explanation of why, even though the body is 99% space and the wall is 99% space, but there's certain, scientific laws that would prevent it, right? That's kind of where we left it. Is that right?
Yeah.
So and that's because the body in this context, I think in science, in Western modern science too, the body is made up of atoms. It's form, right?
Sure.
But only 1% of it is form, right? Oh, well, space, right?
Only 1% of it is not space, right?
Sorry, only 1% of it is not space, right? And same with the wall. We're just talking I'm talking as a layperson here, but just and the wall itself, right? So there's very little form. There's very little obstruction, correct? By the way, and what's the definition of form in Buddhism? Well, of course we have a definition. The definition of form is that which obstructs. Okay?
Mm.
So sound is also form. Okay? I think you said something, Lucas, last week about waves and particles. Did you say that with sound?
I don't remember mentioning sound, but
in your is sound can we say it's form? Can we agree on that?
That's a tough because I don't know what you mean by form when you say form.
Well, let me ask you this. Is sound made up of particles, atomic? Is it atomic?
Sound is the movement of particles.
So it is, right. So it's so those particles, right, are form in this context, in the Buddhist context. They are form because they obstruct, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So if your theory about going through walls, how it's not, I'm putting you on the spot. Okay, I'm just teasing you a little bit. If you say you can't go through the wall because of these scientific laws that you were explaining to me last week, which I didn't really follow too well, then in theory, if those laws are true, then sound wouldn't be able to go through walls either.
No. Because vibration occurs, right? Sound is vibration of particles. So if I smack one particle on one side, it would vibrate throughout the entire the form of it all of the pieces that are close to each other would interact with each other, and then that same vibration would occur on the other side. So that's what you're hearing, right? You're hearing that has progressed through the object.
So nothing's gone through the wall.
Vibration does, right?
Yeah, something goes through.
The other side are now moving in the same way that the particles on the original side were moving.
So if you can you imagine, could it not be so different with someone's body?
Well, that's an interesting theory. People talk about like potentially like teleporting via like quantum intent, but that's it's very complex and has lots of things.
So I want to encourage you as you continue your interest, that all of these things I'm talking about, all the science, by the way, we have texts on the science, the Buddhist science. All this is explained: nature of atoms, nature of particles, all that kind of stuff. I've read it. I'm not a science guy, but I read it because I find it interesting and I find it useful. So I just want to encourage you to maybe continue your search and see, well, how do they explain it? Because it is explained.
Mm-hmm.
It's different. It's different, and it's based on anyway. So,
quick question.
Yeah.
How would you find that stuff, like Buddhist science material?
I can send you some references if Denise reminds me later.
That'd be cool to look through.
Yeah. There's quite a bit now because of the Dalai Lama's, when he's 89 now, but when he was in Tibet, he left Tibet. He was forced out of Tibet, I think when he was 16. But prior to that, he was and always has been very interested in science. So you can imagine, some 70 years ago, 65, 70 years, he was trying to get access to science in very isolated Tibet. He was fascinated by science. And so as a result, he initiated this seminar series called the Mind Life Institute. And every year he'd bring together different scientists from different traditions, Western scientists or modern scientists. And so that's one place that has a lot, and I'll try and give you some links and some references. Okay, but there's been a lot. There's been a lot done, depending on the discipline, psychology, physics, that sort of thing. Okay.
Karuna,
yeah.
If I may, just to mention it out here.
How come no one's camera is on?
That conference is where the Dalai Lama challenged the scientists to understand consciousness moving between lives.
Yeah, that's just one of the things. I mean, there's dozens of topics they covered because it went on for probably 20 years. So
yeah, so if you guys have a chance, the DalaiLama.com, just DalaiLama.com has a lot of resources, but then that particular, if you like the science, those particular meetings are great.
Yeah, so maybe start there, Lucas, and everybody else. And then you can get back to me if you don't find what you're looking for. Okay, let's go to, so what I wanted to point out here. So living being, we are living beings, and this applies, there are many kinds of living beings. you know, we include insects and animals, fish, birds, microorganisms. They're all in the animal realm. And there are other kinds of beings too, you know, whether they're heavenly beings or celestial beings. We have and then there's spirits and ghosts and those kinds of things. They're not in the animal realm. They're in their own little realm, not little, big. And then there's even there's a very deep lower realm. But don't worry about that. And just my point is that there's many, countless kinds of living beings. Now, our human living being, we are made up of a mind and a body. Okay? I'm getting to Nathan's question about intention, by the way. So we're made up of a mind and a body. That's what a human being is. That's what most humans, animals are. Now, in this, let me see my next slide. So in the when we describe, there's just one schematic. This is a very popular one in Buddhism. That the body is the physical body. Okay, we know what that is. All that solid physical body. Now the feelings, discriminations, compositional factors, and consciousness are all formless. Okay, your feelings are formless. Your discrimination is not exactly what it means in our usual vernacular. It means you know, discriminating like hot, cold, light, dark. You know, when you're walking across the room, the reason we don't walk into a chair, for example, is because of the mental quality of discrimination. So it means it in a unique sense. Compositional factors, there's 51 of them, but 2 of them are included in feeling and discrimination. So they're under the 51. But so one of the mental factors, this is a class I teach. It goes on for some weeks, you know, you can take it. But what I want to point out is that one of the mental factors so there's 5 that are always present in anything we do, even sleeping, even in a coma. And one of those is intention. Our mind going towards any object all the time. Yeah, another one is intention, attention, feeling. There's 5. They're always there, always. Even when you die, well, they absorb for a little while, but then they come back. And so intention, Nathan, is one of them. Now, so intention in this case doesn't mean, oh, I think I'll do something good today. Oh, I think, you know, I intend to, you know, take the day off. That's not what's meant by intention. What intention is here is that the mind, whenever it moves through an intention. And usually it's an attraction. Okay? When the mind moves to something, it's usually attraction. And it's like, I want that. Okay, that's later. Okay, but the first thing it gets to look at things is intention. Okay, so intention is also it is the closest synonym to karma. Okay, so every time our mind moves and has an intention with it, there is an imprint then, because we experience. And an imprint is made and it's planted, it's stored on the consciousness, on the mind itself. Okay? And when we die, all those imprints go with us. Okay? And we can get into it in a more, but I wanted to explain why we do intention. So let's say, now, it's not a class on karma, but just the basic understanding of karma is that it means mental action, pretty much. It includes physical action, but anytime you do something physically, your mind is also doing it. Okay, if you get real, if you always think about, like, if you're gonna, you know, I don't know, if you're gonna go for a run, you know, your mind is also running, right? So you have to intend to go for a run. It doesn't just happen, even though we say it's accidental or just happen. That's not actually true. So when I just, we weren't aware is all. But then intention to go for a run because I want to feel better. You know, I feel a little lazy and sluggish. then that intention, all of that is planted on our consciousness for the future. It's like they're seeds, imprint seeds. So then, why are some people runners and other people are swimmers? And what all has to do with the mental imprints, and everyone's different. So maybe I remember as a young person, I didn't do much running, but I did a lot of surfing. And so I still get, here I am, surf for decades, but I get kind of, what's the word? Denise, what's the word? I get kind of, I get kind of a buzz when I start seeing people going out to surf. I remember that feeling, paddling out, you go down and watch them. Huh? Stoke. Yeah, it's more visceral. My body starts to go, and actually, when I talk to people who used to surf, they don't surf anymore. They get very romantic about it. And, and the point is that when I used to go in the water, all that experience in the water left imprints on my consciousness. And those imprints were very, very pleasurable. Not all of them, of course, but, the majority are probably pleasurable, right? And so that leaves that imprint on my conscience pleasurable. And imprints are only of three kinds. You only have harmful imprints, helpful imprints, and neutral imprints. Harmful in the Buddhist language, they talk about is non-virtuous. Okay? Helpful or virtuous. Why does it matter? Because virtuous or helpful karmic imprints lead to happy states of mind, and unhelpful actions and mental states, imprints, lead to an unhappy mind. So if you want to know, why do I feel so depressed today? If you ask the Buddhist psychologist, not that he or she will tell you that, but the reason is because imprints are arising for you on your own conscience. No one put those depressive thoughts in your head. We say, oh, my girlfriend broke up with me, and so that's why I'm depressed. So the Buddhist psychologist doesn't go there. They'll say, yeah, that's too bad. I'm sorry, but they're not processing that. I mean, I used to go see my teachers, Lama Yeshe and Lama Thubten Yeshe. If I had a problem, they almost never made me feel better. It's like, what they did is they helped me work through it and accept it in a way that was going to be a way that would change my relationship with that experience. So, yeah. Okay. How did I get on? So that's the intention. So the mind is clear, like the sky, and always has been, always will be. Okay. Excuse me, obscured by the afflictions, delusions, mental disorders. Okay. Now, why does Denise not have like heavy afflictions, delusions? She has kind of a happy demeanor, right? So I don't know where her level of attainment is, but if she's like me in any way, then the reason is that she didn't create these imprints. That, she's not obscured by the afflictions, delusions, and mental disorders, because those mental imprints are not ripening in her mind right now. Now, maybe she doesn't have them in her mind anymore either. That's possible. So when we talk about nirvana, enlightenment, or mental health, right, just being mentally healthy, we're talking about having cleared these afflictions out of the mind, these disturbing emotions, and they have levels to them. So it's not like, oh, now I got rid of my anger. No, it doesn't work like that. You get rid of a level of anger, then the next level, and the next level, and the next level. And then it's agitation, then it's irritation, then it's, even the very high meditator still has anger, but it's at a level of like subtle irritation. Meditating and a thought might arise and it gives her a little discomfort. And then she wants to move away from it. That's anger, but we don't call that anger. Okay. I mean, outside Buddhist psychology. Really, so perception is when you have a consciousness and you have your sense organ and then you have an object. So that's perception. If you don't have a sense organ, you don't have perception. Sorry. If you don't have an eye, sight, you don't have an object. Okay. You can experience the world through other ways. Okay, or if you lose your hearing. Okay, so this is what perception is. Then every perception is going to have one of these three reactions. One of them, you're going to agree with it, or disagree, or it's neutral. This is what you watch in your meditation. Okay, and then you're going to, depending on which one of those it is, then you react. If it's agreeable, then you want more of it. Okay, if it's disagreeable, you want to get away from it. Neutral, you get kind of dull. Okay. Now, what does this have to do with anything that we're talking about? So the nature of reality is that's what's going on in our mind. But when we talk about nature of reality, and we're going to go into more depth next week, this is where we're at. When I talked about impermanence, that wall in front of you is in the nature of movement. Okay? But we don't see that, do we? You know, if you put time-lapse photography, then you see it. And you can see, yeah, it is moving. Okay? Because we know scientifically the atoms and the molecules are flying around and hitting each other and all kinds of stuff. So we see what is not there. What we see that's not there is permanence and a few other things. And we do not see what is there. What is there is impermanence. Now, and so we're hallucinating. Our reality is like a hallucination. It doesn't mean the lamp is not there.
So when you say that right there,
mm-hmm.
as in reality is a hallucination.
Yes.
Are you saying
no? What we see is an hallucination. When we see
what we see is a hallucination. So are you saying that as in like our minds are that hallucination? So like what we build from when we're children up till now, right? All these barriers, whatever we build, that is that hallucination you're saying?
I'm saying sorry. Go ahead.
And the like the day-to-day impermanence, whatever.
Even what we're seeing right this second is a hallucination.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
But is it a hallucination because of my mind?
Yes.
Not my eyes, right? It's because of my mind.
Correct. The eyes are neutral.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Eyes are like the camera lens for the most part.
So the hallucination is everything that I've built in my head.
Correct.
Pretty much. Yeah. Correct. Okay.
So then we start talking nature reality. When we talk about the nature of reality, I believe I mentioned, and I say a lot. I realize it's hard to grok all this stuff, but with nature reality, there are 4 Buddhist philosophical schools, and one says the reality of things out there are like this, and the reality of the self is like this. And by the way, there's only 2 things we're really concerned about: the sense of identity and everything else. But everything else means all phenomena. Okay, all the things that exist. The bread, the trees, the swimming pool, the cars, the road, our kids. You know, all the external objects are the phenomena. And so that's all the objects that we perceive. We perceive them incorrectly, but it's not our eyes, it's our mind. Okay? Because there's no experience without a mind. Okay.
I have something that I'm thinking right now. Sorry.
Yeah.
Would you say that a child, like a baby,
mm-hmm.
is somewhat like enlightenment? You know what I mean? So like someone that hasn't built anything.
No, because I believe, where did that baby's mind come from?
What did you say?
Where did that baby? I don't think like that. There is a difference. Maybe it's better to say where I agree with you.
Yeah.
There is a qualitative difference in a baby, young child's mind, the way their mind functions and perceives, than an adult's mind.
Yeah, of course.
There's a level of purity. Like I said, the mind is clear. But because because the consciousness is a stream from endless lifetimes, they're not enlightened. The quality of their mind might be. It's kind of like you can experience an extreme, a very heightened state of clarity in your mind in meditation. but that doesn't mean you're enlightened, right? It just
Yeah.
means when you come out of it, there you are. I mean, maybe there's a little improvement. So yeah.
So this goes back to something that I wrote earlier
Uh-huh.
down. I wrote that, so you said that children that are learning Buddhism, they do a lot of memorization from the young ages, right? And they don't do a lot of the philosophy and the psychology.
And
Would you
meditation.
say that has to happen because you can't necessarily bring in the psychology aspects without that
No,
person actually building barriers?
no, I don't say
So you have to, okay.
I don't say that, but in the traditional education system, it's more like how it's describing it. But there are programs that I don't say Western, modern people, Westerners have developed that is teaching children in child language and concepts, things like impermanence, nature, reality, they are
Yeah.
teaching them, but they can't be at the level, the philosophical rigor, right, that we're talking about.
Yeah, of course.
Won't have the language with it, and that's it. But definitely children can do this. Definitely. I mean, I'll put a plug in for my wife because she developed a program. She's started a school that Denise knows about it. Tara Redwood School down here in Santa Cruz. She started, I think it was in '89 when we moved out from Nepal. And she just didn't want to put our own kids in the school system here after we lived in Nepal for 12 years and our kids spent some years there. And she was a teacher at the monastery. And she said, I can't put my kids, this is meaningless. And so she went and created her own curriculum based on Buddhism, but secular. There's no religion in it, so that anyone could come and relate to it.
Yeah.
So there are programs now developing like that. So yes, long answer to your question. Okay. Okay. Okay.
For the potential people interested in her curriculum, her name is Pamela Cayton. And she does have a book with her curriculum that is beautiful. What's the name of her book again, Karuna?
I know it.
I'll get it on Amazon and put the link in here for us. Creating Compassionate Cultures or something. It's beautiful.
Okay. So, okay. So any other questions? Am I overwhelming too much? It's a lot. Huge. It's just the way I go. Sorry.
And Kevin had a comment.
Okay, Kevin.
Oh, no, I was just saying this is fascinating, absolutely fascinating and enlightening. Thank you.
Okay, good. I hope that, yeah, I just, there's so much, and don't worry if it's not all, like I said last week, the teachings on reality I've been studying for 45 years. I keep going back, and I think that's what's so exciting about these ideas is that they're so enriching and so mind-blowing, and they just expand your mind, and it's like, why not? You don't have to accept them. Please don't feel you have to accept anything I say. The whole idea is to examine. In fact, you may have heard, maybe Denise has said, but there's a very famous saying by the Buddha, Shakyamuni, the historical Buddha, and he said, don't believe my teachings just because you believe in me. Okay? In other words, it's not a faith-based religion. He said, first, take my teachings and test it like you would test gold. And that's back in the day. He says, make sure you rub it, you burn it, you maybe apply mercury to it. And if it holds its purity, if it's gold, then you can be convinced. Okay. So total permission to you have to be a skeptic. Skeptic leaning towards belief. Remember, we talked about that. It's good. It's very good. Otherwise, you just become, Lama Yeshe used to call them my mushroom students. So they just pop up in the dark. It's like, it wasn't a compliment, So, yeah. I wonder what else. Oh, well, so just to touch quickly on the nature reality, and we're going to go.
Can I put you on pause for one quick second?
Yeah.
First, Pam's book officially is Compassion in Education, an Introduction to Creating Compassionate Cultures. It does have 35 lesson plans in that book also, so it's pretty amazing. And I want to touch base with Rachel. How you doing in there, hanging in there, Rachel?
Good. Thank you for that plug-in for your wife too, because I'm looking for a curriculum for my son for second grade.
Oh,
And this is everything he's fascinated with. So
where do you live?
I'm in Florida right at the minute.
She
Yeah.
also has online training program, but if you just reach out to her, you know, that's probably the best way. Just send her an email if you want it, if you're curious, and you can.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. I did have a question then, going into the imprinting. You talked about the harmful imprints and then the helpful imprints. Could you kind of go into some ways to purify the harmful imprints, and how did some of your teachers help guide you through that? You talked about the relationship you had with those imprints. How did you cleanse or purify those relationships?
Yeah, it's a great question. We say in Buddhist practice, there's only two practices: purification and creating positive karma. They call it merit, but so making positive imprints and purifying the negative ones. That's only every practice in Buddhism is directed at those two, one or both of those two. So there's 84,000 different teachings that talk about purifying those imprints. I'm not kind of making a point. It's a bit rhetorical, I guess, but they always talk about 84,000 different teachings and methodologies because there's 84,000 different afflictions. Okay, so when we in terms of purifying, that it's complex because it depends on kind of what you're trying to purify, how deep the negative imprint is, how bad it is, so to speak, or how dark it is, how strong it is. So there's different practices, and this is where eventually one gets led to, maybe I'll try practicing some of this Buddhism stuff because it makes sense to you. And then, of course, they're going to give you a methodology to, you know, to purify your mind. The whole purpose of Buddhism is purify the mind and get to that, so you can get in touch with your clarity, your natural state of mind. So it's a little complex. It's very complex, and that's really what teachers, you know, a skillful teacher is helping you to purify your mind through these different meditation methods. There's also physical methods. You know, you see, I mean, this is just in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, which is when I come from. For example, you know, they do prostrations. You know, the purpose of prostration is to purify the negative imprints that you created with your body, you know, like killing and stealing and that kind of stuff. But, you know, it's also like, for example, killing. I hope Carrie's not listening. Fishing, for example, you know, it is killing unless you're catch and release, and which I think Carrie does, by the way. So anyway, the thing with fishing, one of the ways to purify is to save lives.
Good lives that wouldn't otherwise be living.
Yeah. So we talk about killing and stealing, for example. Let's say stealing. You know, you can take what are called the 10 non-virtuous actions, and like killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying. Those are 3 body ones, and 4 of speech are lying, slandering somebody, talking harshly, and gossiping or meaningless talk. And then 3 of the mind, which are wrong views, covetousness, and ill will. Okay, so all of those can be purified. And in fact, if you start looking at any of the things we've done, it may look like something different, but if you get right down to it, it's going to fall in probably in one of those 10 in some form. Well, for example, you don't have to get too religious about it. Killing, you know, make an effort to go out of your way to save a bunch of worms and set them free, or crickets, or, you know, bait. Or in Nepal, we have animal sanctuaries where they, you know, because they slaughter goats and even buffaloes and chickens. And so sometimes we go into the marketplace and buy live chickens that are going to be butchered, and then we have this animal sanctuary. It's this land that is fenced in and protected, and we set the animals free in there. So that's, for example, to purify the karma of killing. That's just one thing. Stealing, you know, you can turn your, you know, oh, by the way, before you do any of these things, you always have a sense of regret. Like, I wish I didn't, not guilt. Guilt, there's no word for guilt in Tibetan, by the way. But regret, like, oh gosh, I just hit that squirrel, you know how you have that natural regret when you run over a dog or something? It's the same thing. It's that natural regret. So you have a natural regret for doing any of these things. And so for stealing, for example, you can purify that person. You have to have regret, and then you have to have an action to counter it, which would be maybe you practice some generosity. This is directed towards, you thought, oh, I stole that thing the other day, I should have paid for that pastry that the waiter gave me but forgot to put on our bill. Technically, that's stealing if you didn't pay for it. Because by the way, if you don't know, it's different. So stealing, which just means taking something that belongs to somebody else. Sexual misconduct, we don't have to go into that, but it's adultery and all kinds of things, and for that, they say, well, take a vow of celibacy for a day or a week or something like that, or do something for battered women, if that's your intention. I mean, that or sexually abused women because you treated women poorly or something. I'm really going fast. I'm making all this up. Then the others we could talk about, but those are three of the body. And then you have things like slandering someone and harsh speech and, slandering or criticizing people, and then harsh speech and meaningless gossip. And then, what was my fourth one in speech? Lying. Lying is one of the, lying we do a lot of. Why do we have to purify these? Because what we talked about before, they're negative imprints. It's only you that's not going to be happy. No one. It has to do with you. It's like be a little selfish in a good way. Purify that, and you don't have to experience the results. If you're wondering why you're getting such crap at work that no one believes you, right, or is calling you up, it's something probably to do with your speech.
Karuna, do you have more slides, or should we switch back to speaker?
Oh yeah. Okay. I do have one other one. It's really amazing. Here's the first one. And I just want to point this out to my friend Lucas. So, this is just number one. It's also called Supernormal Powers, but number two, for example, is a divine ear clairaudience. So you can hear sounds all over the human world. You can hear sounds even from the heavenly celestial realms.
Wow.
You can hear sounds from other realms where sentient beings abide. You can hear far away sounds as if they were nearby. Now, I'm going to tell you how this happens, though. Then the third one is understanding the minds of others. You know the mental states of others, and you experience this with very high lamas. They just like zero in on your mental state, and it's like, God, I felt so seen. He knew. I didn't have to tell him. He just knew. We know the minds affected and unaffected by attachment, anger, and confusion. We know, you understand the minds, understand the exalted and unexalted minds, which is what was brought up a minute ago. Concentrated and unconcentrated minds, liberated and unliberated minds. Other people's mental states are known as clearly as seeing a spot on our own face in a mirror. And when you're with these couple, not countless on this planet, there's just a handful of these, or maybe a little more than a handful, these beings, you just feel naked sitting there. You have nothing to hide because they can see it. Okay. And you experience that. It's some energy that happens, even though we can't see their mind, we don't have that clarity, but there's some sort of vibration that happens between you and the Lama or that person. And you go, wow, he just knew my mind. You leave there. It's powerful. You're able to know the particular details of our own past lives for eons in the past. Our own past lives for eons in the past. That's number 4. Number 5, the divine eye. You can see beings dying and reappearing in their next life according to their karma, their imprints. We know actions, beings. Yeah.
Can you tell that story about you never know, you might be born as a dog, remember? And then somebody was petting, wasn't it Lama Zopa? And he was petting the dog, talking about somebody's past.
Oh yeah. Often the dogs, like in the monasteries, were They probably were monks, or who were very attached to the monastery and weren't. But that was I think the story you might be saying is there was one Lama at Kopan who I worked with closely, but he did some bad, he used to beat the boys. That was that was very traditional, by the way. That was cultural. They don't do it anymore. But discipline. They used to, discipline them like in the Catholic churches back, or the nuns or whatever. Yeah, a few of them he kind of hurt. He'd kind of go a little too far. Yeah, he was a great man. He was a Lama, a monk, and he was building a well for the monastery. And one worker, Nepali worker, not a monk, a lay person, went down, and they were digging this well, and this lay person, this Nepali guy didn't come up. So Lama Pasang was his name. So Lama Pasang sent another worker down to see what was going on. And then after a while, he didn't come up. So Lama Pasang himself went down into this deep tunnel, shaft. And then he didn't come up. So they all three died. I guess I don't know what it is, methane, or no. What is that gas? Anyway, I don't know. We don't know. It's one of those gases that. And so a couple of years later, there was a dog, one of the dogs at the monastery. There was one Western student, and the student asked Lama Zopa Rinpoche, who's completely clairvoyant. I can tell you, he hasn't slept for 40 years. I mean, it's one of those ones you go out and go, God, he saw everything in my mind. I can just feel it. But anyway, I was with him for 40 years. So, I mean, I can't say I'm an expert, but that was my experience. So anyway, this person said to Lama Zopa, oh, do you think that's the incarnation of Lama Pasang? And Lama Zopa Rinpoche got kind of showed the aspect of being kind of irritated with the person, and said, Lama Pasang was a disciple of Lama Yeshe, who had passed away some years earlier. And there's no disciple of Lama Yeshe that could be reborn in the lower realms. So no, it's not. So I don't know if that's its story, but I like that one more. The divine eye can see beings die and reappear in their next life according to their karma. We know actions beings have done to cause rebirth in particular realms, can see events in faraway places and other dimensions in the universe. And Dharma teachers who use this, who have this quality, know the karma of students and who they can benefit. So some they don't choose, might not create a student relationship with, because maybe there's no way to benefit with that particular student. Which ones are ripe to enter the path? Then their powers would go to these places to teach them. So they could possibly not even be in this right around them. And the sixth one is supernormal. This is not, the first five can be attained through deep meditation. You attain single-pointed concentration. So this is within many traditions, a Hindu tradition, different Buddhist traditions, perhaps even in the Islamic and Christian traditions. If you develop that deep level of concentration, you can attain those 5 clairvoyances, but we call them mundane because they don't lead out of suffering. Only this last one does, which is knowing the destruction of all pollutants, where you have a clairvoyance of knowing exactly how to liberate the mind from different afflictions. So it's about liberating the mind, not just about, I can go to heavenly realms and all that kind of thing. The first one I jumped through because this is also called Supernormal Powers, which this is for Lucas maybe a little bit. They defy ordinary scientific law by gaining mastery over nature. They can make many bodies from one body and then recollect them back to one. They can become invisible. They can pass through walls. They can walk on water. They fly in space. This is attained from a very high competency and concentration absorption. And this is the point of saying this is the potential of our mind. This is it. Not just, if we start developing these qualities, we won't be so worried about whether we live in a van or a nice house, whether we have a crummy car or a nice car, whether we eat, dog food or gourmet food. It doesn't matter, because all those kind of sensory pleasures become very mundane when you develop the high levels of concentration, which means developing the higher qualities of our own mind. Okay, that's the whole point of all this. And I'm sure I lost someone with all those superpowers, but anyway, they're kind of fun. aren't they?
I
I'm
have a
sure,
question about it.
I'm sure I really irritated some people with that, but yes, please.
No.
Just
Is
one last
yeah.
thing. Sorry. The reason I point that out is not to convince you. It's to say how limited we make ourselves in terms of what we're capable of, what our potential is. Okay. That's kind of why I'm just trying to wow you with a little bit of that. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
You're saying this like that kind of stuff can actually happen like in the like your with your physical body.
Yes.
What I'm wondering is, are there examples of like journalists or anybody documenting this, like seeing this happen? Because I feel like if that was a thing, it would be like a big deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's a very, very, very important question. Number one, in the Buddhist tradition, it's against one's vows to demonstrate any qualities at all. Now,
like compassion?
well, it's not wrong to manifest compassion, to show compassion, but they would not manifest it to the level that they really possess it.
Okay.
Now with wisdom, because we can break the Buddhist teachings down into just two categories, wisdom and compassion. Wisdom is the understanding of reality. And in the understanding of reality, if someone tells you, and I've had people tell me this, and the Sanskrit word for this perception is called shunyata. And I have heard people tell me that they realize shunyata. And if they tell me, I know they haven't.
Mm-hmm.
Most likely. 98% chance they didn't. Because I've been with too many lamas that I know have realized shunyata, emptiness of inherent existence. They have realized reality. When we say emptiness, it means reality. And they never say it. It leaks out of them, by the way. It leaks out, of course, because they're there to benefit. That's how they see things. But they'll never say, oh, I realized shunyata. Now, that's not 100% true what I'm saying. Sometimes in their biographies, or sometimes they'll say to a fellow Lama or practitioner, they might share that. Because like, for example, Lama Yeshe, it was kind of known, he realized shunyata in the debate courtyard in Tibet before he left, before they were forced out. And he had told couple of his best friends. That's okay. But to say it publicly or in any other context without really a real reason is not allowed. So even if you, like Lama Zopa Rinpoche had attained this high level, same with Lama Yeshe, this level of concentration, he attained decades ago. If you ask him, hey, Rinpoche, I heard you don't sleep at night anymore. How long has that been? They say, oh no, I sleep every night. I have such good sleep. I never saw him lie down. I even lived in the same room with him for weeks. And it doesn't mean I don't have to prove that to you, because I was with him a lot. And, he'd stay up all night working, and I'd be falling asleep, and everyone had that experience. He wouldn't stop, It wasn't manic. And he had many, 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 many stories of Lama Zopa's clairvoyance. Many, many. And Lama Yeshe too. And Dalai Lama. And they can't totally hide it, if you know what I mean. It seeps out. And also they sometimes will demonstrate a little bit to their students in order to give them encouragement, right? I mean, we want to know this stuff works. One last, so I will say to you that I have seen things that didn't make sense. Yes. I mean, otherwise, why do this? It doesn't work. You know what I mean? And I'll tell you a little story. Can I tell a story, Denise? Do I have time?
Yes.
So Lama Thubten Yeshe was my root teacher. We were together. I was with him for 9 years before he passed away. And about last year of his life, phenomenal. You can find his teachings online, Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archive. He was a phenomenal teacher, one of a kind. And So before, about a year, during the last year of his life, he used to say to me, so Karuna, I'm going to become you and you're going to become me. I said, what? He would say, they all say things that you don't know what they mean. I say, okay, yeah, right, Lama, Then another couple months later, he says, I'm going to become you and you're going to become me. And I was like, so he said it like 4 or 5 times. And he died. And I had the great honor, very, very tough, to care for him for the 2 months he fell fatally ill. We went into sort of seclusion in New Delhi from Nepal to get him healthy enough to come to the United States so he could have open heart surgery, which he didn't have. He passed away. And so he said that you're going to become, you can be. And then I thought, I wonder, what did he mean? And then I realized, like, oh, maybe what he meant is when he took rebirth as a Spanish boy. And I thought, oh, that's what he meant. He meant, he's going to be a Westerner, and I'm kind of so Nepali or Tibetan, and then I have some responsibility. I'm on the board of directors, so maybe, man, I'm going to have to help, run things like he was doing. Maybe that's what he meant. So his incarnation as a young boy spent some years at Kopan, at the monastery where I lived. And my oldest son, was about the same age. So I used to go work in Kathmandu. I was teaching English in Kathmandu, and I had a really, from Kopan to Kathmandu is 11 kilometers, and I had a really nice motorcycle, and it wasn't not many vehicles in those days, not many roads. And so I would go, and then I go to work, and I come home in the evening. And so one evening I came, and I know that they would often go play, and our house was up there at the monastery, and they Lama Oso is his name. Lama Yeshe's incarnation, Lama Oso. Lama Oso and my son used to play together at our house, and my wife would feed them lunch, and they just play. They're the same age. So one day I got off my motorcycle, and I'm walking down the trail and past the temple where he lived on the top floor. And all of a sudden the windows flew open, and he looked out at me and he said, "Hey, Karuna, my son's name is John. Hey, Karuna, guess what happened today? Guess what happened?" I said, "What happened?" He said, "Oh, Jana and I, we were playing so much. It was so funny. It was so funny because I told him so many times, I'm going to become you and you're going to become me." And they slammed the window shut. They laughed and slammed the window shut. I mean, it could be coincidence. I don't know. This probably, for me, it meant that he was demonstrating that it's the same stream of consciousness, that was my teacher, Lama Yeshe. So that's my little story. And there are many of Lama Yeshe, many things. There's a beautiful book. Denise, did you read Big Love?
Of course.
There's a very beautiful, took 25 years to write, biography of Lama Yeshe called Big Love. And it's
It's a day by day, as much as possible, account of what Lama Yeshe and a lot of what Lama Zopa did. And then within that, each one of the teachings that he gave is in that. It's huge. It's like 1,600 pages of some pretty small font.
But it's stories. It's all stories. There's some teachings in there too, but story after story. So it's kind of very engaging too, right? It's not really boring.
No, it's pretty interesting.
Any other questions from people?
I wanted to just remind us too, like, for me, when Karuna is saying it seeps out that they have some type of attainment, they're not telling you, and then you don't experience it. I think I've shared to most of us in here that when I met Lama Zopa Rinpoche, I had not known why I would meet him. I did not know how do you introduce yourself to a Lama, or like I didn't know anything about any type of protocol at all. And I'll tell us in more detail in another class. But when I left him, 20 minutes later, every single part of my being was pure love, is what it felt like. Wow. Like everything I had ever done wrong, you can't talk about it without it choking you up.
Yeah. So
everything I had ever done wrong was forgiven. Every part of me was accepted and loved. I mean, it was profound, and all the exchange I had with him was to put a white scarf over him, and for him to put it back over me, and for him to say your name, and for me to say Denise. Denise. That's the only interaction we had.
Yeah, and you had no expectations.
No.
So, we could say, oh, she was putting him up on a pedestal and throne, and she saw what she wanted to see, but that wasn't the case. And especially with Lama Zopa, he's very unassuming. So it's the quality of the being, you see, his attainments, his mind being so purified. And don't accept just because someone's a monk or called Lama this or Rinpoche that, don't accept that they're anything special. So don't accept, I want to be skeptical, okay? Don't, remember I said open skepticism, but many people go, oh, it's Rinpoche, da, 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 and he's like this, that, and this, and they have this sort of magical thinking. It's really dangerous, okay? Show respect, but do your due diligence. Wait, watch them. And if the quality of their behavior fits what they teach, then okay. But we can't jump in, Westerners are a bit naive, unfortunately. And the Tibetans, there's not such great Tibetans out there too, of course. And so just be discriminating, really take your time if you want to study with someone. And also, you don't accept them as your guru. You just accept them as your professor, and then test them for a while. Okay?
Agatha.
What's that?
I'm wondering how Agatha is doing. She was supposed to be flying home tonight, and some amazing power had her be here instead.
I know, right? Yeah, I had my flight for today, but we moved it for Friday, so I could luckily join.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, next week I'll be in Poland, so I'll have to wake up at 3 a.m. to join.
Oh, well, if you do, I'll take that as a great compliment.
Yeah, I'll try. I'll do my best.
Okay, and if you don't, we won't take it as any criticism either.
Yes, please. But for sure, I'll try.
Okay.
Marie, are you hanging in there?
Okay.
I'm here. I'm just listening. Yes.
Okay, so we're at the
sticks out to you, Marie. I know we're at time, but I'm just wanting to make sure that if you have a question, you can ask it while we have a sec.
Oh, no, I'm good. I'm really enjoyed this. Thank you so much, Karuna. But yes, I'm just soaking it all in, and it's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. So if is anyone else?
I do have a comment,
Sure.
And I feel kind of selfish wanting to say this because it's something that I deal with. But the balance between like this, Buddhism or this, whatever this enlightenment is the balance between like real life and this seems very challenging to me. And it's something that I've kind of been dealing with is like, you don't at some point kind of like, I mean, I can see at some point me kind of losing all respect for reality because it's kind of something that your head is making, right? And it's not that pure path, right? So I feel like, and I'm guessing this is something you've dealt with, like the balance between your actual living life and
Sure.
and getting closer to whatever this is. I'm not educated. I don't necessarily know what this is, enlightenment.
Right.
But it just seems that this world, this life kind of pulls me away from this enlightenment or whatever it is.
Yeah, me
and
too.
Yeah, and I'm definitely gonna deal with it for my whole life. But are there tips to how you can live both at the same time and happily? You know what I mean?
No, you have to be unhappy. I mean, listen, Nathan, so the reason I told Denise I was wary about teaching this topic is because it's not a topic taught early.
Yeah.
So your questions are great because it brings us back into line. And so that's the challenge for me and I won't say discomfort, but my caution is that a little bit of knowledge is dangerous, right? As I say. And so we don't even have a snapshot yet of what really the topic is. We just barely have a line drawing, you know. But I will say this, and I'll help you out. I mean, number one is all the qualified teachers I know are really happy. You know, they're really happy. And you know, this is very important. It's not either or. It's not like us and them. That's what I found in the Hindu tradition when I was in. No, it's a path. So all of us are at different places, you know, and even the path to enlightenment technically goes through 10 different stages, you know, in one articulation. And those 10 stages, and this is going to blow your mind, so this might help you relax. For the historical Buddha, it took him 3 countless eons from when he entered the path to when he attained that enlightenment. So relax. Relax. And the other thing is one philosophical thing, because what I've left you with is when we talk about the nature of reality, I haven't told you really what it is, have I? No. So don't pay much attention to what you might think it is, because this is all introductory. Next week, maybe I will give a little bit more, you know, definition of what that means. Now, one thing is that there's a Zen koan, Zen saying, it's a Buddhist saying before enlightenment, chopping wood and carrying water. After enlightenment, chopping wood and carrying water. The relative world is never denied in this path. Now, some practitioners, philosophers, scholars, remember I told you there's 4 schools of philosophy? Well, the highest school, which is what we adhere to, they criticize those lower schools. They said, hey, you're throwing out relative reality, or you're throwing out absolute reality. There's only two truths. So there is relative truth. That's us going to work every day and marrying and getting kids or not having kids or becoming a monk or nun or staying single and crying and laughing and, you know, seeing the suffering in the world and wars and economy. And we're not saying that's not there. It is there. It's just misperceived how it exists. That's all. And if we can see all that with a more pure view, that view will be closer to what is really there. But you know what? When you see that pure view, the war in Gaza doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Okay. Your relationship with the war in Gaza changes. But no, you might, in fact, where you never thought of before, you might run over there and help, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Can't say because it's from wisdom. So yeah, so I just want to conventionally, don't worry.
Yeah, no, that helps. That helps.
One last, why the Buddhism is called the path of the middle way is because in the highest philosophical school, they say the danger is you're going to say nothing exists, or you're going to say everything exists. Well, right now, all of us are in the everything exists camp. And then you start meditating on this stuff that you were talking, and I'm sure it felt to you like, well, what's Karuna saying? Like nothing matters, nothing exists. That's what I kind of, yeah, that's the other extreme. Those are the 2 dangers. Nihilism and absolutism, they're called, or nihilism and eternalism, doesn't matter. Okay. Wow.
Yeah, thank you.
You did a lot. You guys are good. I hope people are not leaving. Oh, was it Rachel? Was your hand up? No. I hope you're not leaving, you know, frustrated or exhausted. Just we're having this is meant to kind of engage. Of course, I do most of the talking, but I really want it to be, a connection with all of us. Okay, that's what I really want, to have a connection, and we'll just be curious. The rest of our life, we'll be curious. Okay. So then, like we do traditionally, is because intention leaves an imprint. We're always intending. And then we're finishing right now. So we do kind of a dedication, or it's like going to work and then you're earning all this money and you decide to put it in the bank for your, dedicate it towards buying a house. If you live outside California, that is. And so here, you know, we have all these imprints we've created over the last hour and 45 minutes. And so just think, instead of them just ripening, you know, they will ripen, but they might ripen as, you know, some lifetime you're a professor at Harvard or something. Well, that's not that great. So that they ripen so that your own mind, our minds become totally purified. We get back to our clear light nature of the mind, which we have already. It's just obscured. And then when we, in order to attain that clarity, our wisdom will increase, our compassion will increase naturally. We don't have to try. And it will work for the benefit of all the other beings who are still struggling. And there's countless. Okay. Thank you very much. See you
Thank
next
you
week.
so much, Karuna. We'll see you next week.
Okay, good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karuna.
Thanks.
Thanks, Karuna. Thanks,
Adios.
Denise.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you then.